Alright, so this is our session 2 of class 1. So we've gotten to the point where we have now masked out the type successfully, and it's showing the blue color of the type underneath. I'm just going to get rid of the alpha mask for now. So this is our mask. The red layer is our trim path mask that we created in a shape layer, and then we added them all together in a pre-composition, and that is masking our type underneath, which is the blue hello. So right now I just took the track matte off, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide the mask layer because we want to be working with the colors of the actual word hello. Okay, so the goal is to try and create this type of an effect. So what we're aiming for is to add a color to the word hello and to animate that color using fractal noise. So as you can see, the actual color in the word hello changes. There's a whole bunch of different variations to it, and that's because of the fractal noise that's added to the color itself. So we're sort of animating the color a little bit, and that's what we're going to aim on now, is to try and recreate this effect with regards to color. And then I will show you how to pre-compose that and how to set 3 colors on top of each other. As you can see, it starts off gray, then a dark red, and then moves on to a lighter pinkish color. So that's what we're going to be looking at now. So the first thing that we want to do is I want to make the word hello, I want to give it just a normal white color. So now the word is completely white, and above that I want to add a new layer, and it's going to be an adjustment layer, and this is where we're going to be adding the fractal noise. So on this adjustment layer, you can leave it titled adjustment layer if you want to, or you can rename it to fractal noise, so you know exactly what that is. Once I select that layer, I'm going to go to effects. I'm going to look for noise and grain and select fractal noise. Alternatively, you can always go to the effects and presets over here on the right hand side and type in fractal noise, and you'll see under noise and grain there's fractal noise. So either way you want to apply it, that's fine. So what this fractal noise is essentially doing is the fractal noise is only applying the noise to whichever shape or text that we have applied. So it's already masking itself to this text, even though it's just an adjustment layer, which is quite nice and unique. But you'll see that once we start adding color to it, that it becomes a little bit more complicated with regards to masking. So with this fractal noise, just a few basic things that I want to change. But just to show you what I am changing, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a solid layer, a solid white layer. This is purely for the purpose of demonstration, to show you what I'm actually doing to the fractal noise. So what I'm going to be doing to the fractal noise is, firstly, the fractal noise type. I'm going to just play around and see what sort of fractal noise type I think is going to work best to try and get the effect that I'm looking for. So there's a whole bunch of different types that you can go through and look, and they're all completely different, and they all provide different sort of effects for you. So what I'm looking for is something more or less along this line, because if I go for something that is quite big and bulgy, it's not going to translate well onto the very thin type. So I'm looking for something that's relatively small and has quite a bit of detail, so we can see the transformation happening within the type. The next thing, if you look for the noise type, will be just adjusted the fractal type. The noise type, there's quite a few options that you can go through, or there's 4 to be exact, and they're all slightly different. So what I'm looking for is more of a spline type of a look to make things look a little bit more organic, whereas blocky is completely pixelated. So this will be nice if you want to create some type of a glitch. Linear looks more grid-like, almost like a matrix sort of structure, and then spline is very cloudy, and this is what I'm looking for at the moment. The next thing is I want to just play with the contrast, so the blacks and the whites and how they sort of play together. So I'm looking for something that is, if I leave it at 100%, is pretty much fine, but I want to go a little bit darker so that the darker parts of the fractal noise will translate to the color really well, whereas the lighter parts are just going to lighten the color very well, because I'm going to be playing with the blend modes of this layer. So the blend mode I'm currently thinking about using is some type of a dodge. And what a color dodge does is that if I have, well, let me rather explain that when we get there, but I'm looking for something right along the 82% mark. With regards to brightness, I want to bring it down slightly, not too much, because I want more darker shades of the fractal noise than lighter shades. I'm going to go over that just now. So again, the next thing that we want to play with is the rotation, so that it can animate, but we'll do that a little bit later once we have the colors sorted out and everything along those lines. So that's what's currently happening to the fractal noise with regards to a white solid. If I delete that white solid, then you can see this is what's happening to our actual typeface over here. And what's going to happen now is I want this fractal noise to be solid, and I want to place a color on top of it. And by doing this, I'm going to use a shape layer, and I'm going to be masking as well. And the reason for this is that I want the shape layer to be dodged onto the fractal noise, so where there's more color coming through. Whereas if I dodge the fractal noise onto the color, you'll get less color coming through. So what I want to do now on top of this is that I just want to create a new shape layer. I'm going to make it a full, and the color I'm looking for now, we're just going to go for something along the lines of a pinkish color, and I want to get rid of the stroke, and I'm just going to draw my rectangle over the entire word. And I want to mask this rectangle color onto the word hello itself. So from here, I'm just going to duplicate the word hello. So Control D to duplicate it. You'll see it says hello 2, implying that this is now the duplicated layer. I'm going to move this above the shape layer and above the fractal noise and the shape layer, because I want the color to be masked to this type. So now I have the color, which was the rectangle over here. The rectangle has the color, you can see the fill, and that is masked onto the shape of the type. So this type layer is now invisible because I masked it. So if I get to a point where I want to change the color of this word, instead of highlighting the word and then going into my character properties and changing the color, I can simply select the shape layer, and I can actually call this color change or word color. I'll call it word color, so that I know coming back into this, if I want to change the color, I can select the shape layer, go up to full, and I can adjust it to whatever I want to. And it's a bit more easier and more comprehensible if you do it in this manner than going into the actual type layer, highlighting it itself, and then changing the color, because you might be highlighting the wrong type layer. But this is simply for the purpose of being a bit more practical and having a little bit more control over what you're doing. So now what we have is the base word hello, which is in white, the fractal noise which we just created, which is placed on top of it, and then we have our color rectangle that has been masked to the shape of our word hello, and that's placed on top of it. And I want this color to be dodged, so I'm going to change the blending mode to a linear dodge, and that's going to dodge it on top of the fractal noise. So you can see that there's some light portions and there's some dark portions, and from here we can obviously go in and readjust the contrast a little bit more, as well as the brightness and the flow. Not the overflow, excuse me, the brightness and the contrast. So you can see that the whiter areas of the fractal noise are going to be dodged onto the color over here, and it's going to make it much more lighter, whereas the darker areas are going to be much more darker. And if you play with the contrast, you get a nice comparison and contrast between the super light colors moving all the way into the dark colors. And you can see how this will work if we play with the evolutions. You can see how that's going to affect our type and how it's going to look. Now I don't necessarily want the white to be completely blown out, so that's why I'm just going to be dropping the contrast again, looking for this, the white still contains some sort of color. Now what we're going to do is I'm just going to reset the evolution. And what we're going to do now is that I'm going to set a keyframe for the evolutions over here of the fractal noise now. And I'm going to go up to the end of the composition, which we made 10 seconds. And I'm just going to increase this quite a bit so that it will continuously move make it 7 times its normal evolution. And we can see that once we play it, that there's movement in the color within the word itself, which is quite a nice effect if you want to just bring your type to life. So that is quite interesting to do. So one of the other things that also want to talk about, if we bring the mask layer back into play. Now the mask layer needs to mask all this information over here. So in order to do that, we need to make this into a single layer instead of these 4 individual layers that we have now, because the same principle applies with our mask layer. We had 4 different layers that each contained a pen stroke, and we needed them to work in unison together to mask out the entirety of our word hello, or our letter H. So now by changing the color and implementing these different effects onto our word hello, we need the mask layer to apply to all of them. So the best way to do this is to pre-compose our layer again. So we're grouping everything together so that the mask can act on all of our layers simultaneously. So I'm just going to write there, call the pre-composition hello, so I know it's the word hello. And now if I apply the track matte once again, then we can see that the track matte still does its function, and our transforming color with the fractal noise continues to play for the duration of the 10 seconds. So that's quite a nice and unique effect to have. And one of the other things that I also just want to touch on and tackle is, if you look at this, I spoke about having 3 different colors that appear. So this is one way in which we can tackle this. So something to think about. So right now, my immediate sort of reaction to how I'm going to do this, or the first thing that comes into my mind is, why don't I just highlight these, duplicate them twice, so I can have 3 versions of it, and then just offset them in the timeline. Now you can do that, and that's perfectly fine, but there's one big issue with that, and that is, if I duplicate this word hello, so if I select all of this, I duplicate it, now it's over here on top, the mask's still applying to the right layers. I'm just going to change the color of these layers over here by this beige, orange, brown sort of a square. I can change the color just to make things more identifiable. If I now offset these 2, so in theory the first one starts and then the second one should start on top of it. If I go into this word hello, I select the color change, I move in, or rather before I do that, let me just show you what I was talking about. So over here, if I make the bottom word hello invisible, nothing happens, and this top layer mask only starts at 4 seconds. That's when it starts. Whereas if I do it the other way around, the bottom masked section of the word hello starts immediately. So I want this to start first, and then I want my color change to start over here. So by going into this word hello over here, and I go to the word color, and I want to change it to something drastic now, to a green, and I go back into my composition, I want you to see that I adjusted the green over here on this hello, but the first hello is green as well. And there's a very good reasoning for this now. So what is happening, it's going to undo that. It's not green anymore. So what's happening is that once you delete this, so once you duplicate one of these layers, so if I have to duplicate this layer hello and the mask layer as well, whatever I do to one of those duplicates, it then applies it to all of the different duplicates. That's why when I changed the top hello to green, the bottom hello also changed to green. So that's a big issue with regards to pre-composing and duplicating pre-compositions. So yes, it duplicates it, but once you go inside and make changes, it applies that change to all the different pre-comps. So one way which is quite useful in tackling this is, if you go into your pre-comp, I'm now in the pre-comp hello, which is just a group layer that has all my different effects and color changes to my base word. I'm going to highlight all of these different layers. I'm going to Control C to copy them. going to go into my composition, and then I'm going to Control V to paste them. So now this hello layer is completely empty. So I'm going to delete it for now, and we're back to where we started. So a nice way to deal with this is to highlight all 4 of the layers that make up this base layer with the fractal noise color change. I want to change the color to make everything uniform, so we're going to go for yellow. And I need 3 color changes. So I'm looking for something that's a gray, something that's more of a red, and something that's a lighter sort of pinkish color. So what I want to do is I want to duplicate it outside the pre-comp first, because that way when I do pre-compose all these layers together, they stand as individuals and they're not united or connected by any means. So I'm just going to hit Control D to duplicate it, and you see it duplicates the words above each other. So I'm just going to drag everything right to the bottom, and while they're still all selected, I'm going to change the color to something else, and I want a 3rd color change, so I'm duplicating once again, Control D, moving them the whole way down, and again changing the color to something that we can identify. So let's go for pink. So now we have a yellow color section, a light blue color section, and a pink color section. Now these are just the colors of our layers to help us identify what's going on. So right now we're going to go into the pre-composition. I'm going to select all the yellow layers, right click and pre-compose, and this is going to be our very top color. And if we look at our animation again, the top color is the lightest one, the middle color is our sort of darker red, and our bottom color is our darkest color that we're going to be using. So our top layer should be called light pink for this, our middle layer should be called red, and our background layer or our last layer of our base word should be called gray. So when I pre-compose this, I'm going to call it hello and pink. That's pre-composed. Next I'm going to select the light blue layers. I'm going to right click, pre-compose, call it hello red. That's our middle layer. And lastly I'm going to highlight the pink layers. I'm going to right click, pre-compose, and call it hello gray. So right now I have 3 different sets of our base word that all have the same pink applied to it, but they all act as individuals and they're not connected by any means. But what I want to do as well is I want to duplicate my mask layer. Now the mask layer, there's no changes to it, I won't be adjusting it, so the mask layer can be duplicated directly inside your workspace. So I'm just going to revert all the track matte options to it. And how we had it arranged is your mask layer should always be placed on top of your graphic or shape or text that you want to mask out. So I'm just going to be dragging a mask layer. Remove this track matte. I'm going to be dragging a mask layer above each one of our different stages. So our first stage is the hello pink with its mask layer placed above it. I'm going to give it a nice color of yellow again. Our second layer has the hello red with its mask layer above it. I'm going to change the color to a orange, or rather something that you can differentiate more, to a blue. And our third one is our last color change, which is the hello gray, and the mask layer above that, and we're going to be changing that to, let's say, a dark green. So now these are our 3 different colors. So our light pink, which comes in last, our red, which comes in the middle, and our gray, which comes in first. So a nice way to sort of change this and work around this is or get to the point where we have our gray coming in first, and then our reds, and then our pinks, is just to offset it. So the way which I want to offset is just by moving our actual layers within our time space. So it gives you much more control and you can visually see what's going on. So the first thing is the gray layer comes in first, so that's fine. It's over here at timecode 0, that's perfectly fine. And the yellow layers as well as the blue layers are in the same position. So what I want to do is I want to move forward something like, let's say, about 5 frames. Or we can go according to... So I'm going to go just as our mask for the gray layer reaches the middle. That's when I want the blue layers, which is our red hello portion, our middle color, to begin. So that was 10 seconds. So I'm going to select the 2 blue layers. I'm going to click and drag them off until they're right there on my of my scrubber, and then from there I'm going to move another 10 seconds forward because that's the right timing. So 10 seconds over here, it was 10, now it's 20, and that's where my last layer is going to come into play. So now we can start changing colors and adjusting. So first thing what we're going to do is I'm going to work with the gray layer. So the gray layer, I'm going to, let me first apply the masking to them. So the pink layer, go to our track matte, and I want to alpha mask it to the layer above. Our red hello, our track matte, alpha mask to the layer above, and our gray, we're going to go the same thing, track matte, masking it to the layer above. So once that's done, our masking is now been applied. We used our track mattes and linked everything. I'm going to go into the hello gray composition. I'm going to double click it, and here we have our 4 original layers. So if I go to this word color, now I can start changing it. And initially we said we're looking for something that's a little bit of a gray. So that's sort of a grayish color that looks pretty much fine. I'm going to go back to my pre-comp, and you can see that the color changed, and our color 2 and our color 3 are still pink. So this is what I meant by working individually. The previous example, the way I showed you, or the error which might occur, is if you duplicate your pre-comps and you change the color, it will apply the same color change to all of your pre-comps. So right now we have our gray, that's fine. Our second color, our middle color, according to the animation, is more of a red. So we're going to be looking for that red. Again, going into the hello red, I'm going to do exactly that. I'm going to click on the word color 2 over here, and we're going to be looking for that red color, something along these lines over here. I'm going to select that, go back into my tab over here, my composition tab, and you can see that my second color has changed to red and my third color is pink. So we want to change this to much more of a lighter pink, something that's a little bit more paler, something along these lines over here. I didn't select my word color, there we go. And I'm going to go up all the way there. I'm going to give more of a pale, sort of a red, orange, pinkish type of a look. And back to composition 1. And now you can see how everything sort of builds up with the different colors. Now obviously your timing of this is also going to be quite important. You can see there's quite a big gap over here before the actual red version starts coming in. So what you can do is you can start adjusting this. It's entirely up to you. So I'm just going to go back a couple of frames, 2, 3, 4, go back 4 frames, and I'm going to shift select all of these, move them back 4 frames, and do the same adjustment over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 frames back, select the yellow and bring that back. So now it happens a little bit more quicker, looks a little bit more natural, it's got a much better vibe to it. So this is how you now apply a animated fractal noise into a color that then gets applied to your base word. So this is what we have at the moment. So hopefully you finished off your word with your masking, and now this is how you do the application of the fractal noise, the colors, and you can offset them over here directly in your timeline to make it more visible for you. So you can see that the gray happens first over here. The gray has the space where it's all by itself, and then you include the red, and then you include the pink. And this is the point where we're at now. Another thing to also just show you, the same principle applies, but I just want to apply a background. So I'm going to stick with the same sort of fractal noise, and this is quite a darkish background, a little bit darker than the gray we used for the actual word color itself. So to do that, I'm just going to create a background using a shape layer. You can use a solid, it's absolutely fine, but with the shape layer you have the ability to change the color once it's created. The solid color is, you select the color right here in the beginning, and when you say okay, it's very difficult for you to change that color again without creating a new solid. So I'm going to create a shape layer, go into shape layer, I'm going to just zoom out to make sure I fill the entire composition with the shape layer. So make sure the shape layer is at the bottom, get it out of the way of everything, fill the entire composition, and I want to make it a grayish color, a dark gray color. So I wanted to contrast our very first gray color over here in our green portion. So you can see there's not much contrast over here. So we're just going to click on our shape layer, go back to the fill, and and start playing around. So something that looks like that looks quite nice, not too strong, not too subtle either, so that works out quite well. And I'm going to go back inside our base word, the gray base word. Any base word should be fine. And I'm going to copy the fractal noise pattern that we used. Because it was on an adjustment layer, it's quite easy for me to copy. And what I want to do is I'm going to create an additional adjustment layer above the gray square that I just created. And I want to, oh, excuse me, I don't need to do that because I can just paste it because it's a separate layer. So what I did there is the additional adjustment layer I created, I just deleted, and then I Control V to paste our copied fractal noise layer from here. Fractal noise 3, copy and paste fractal noise over here. And then again I'm going to apply a linear dodge, so we get this type of an effect. And of course, not to make it too strong, I just want to play with the opacity of the fractal noise so it's very subtle in the background. So something like this. So now we have animated background and we have our word that's being built up. So from here, our goal is to get different color variations. So a suggestion would be to use a online color picker. Something what I used for this is something called LOL colors. So that's quite nice for you to use. You can get some nice different types of gradients and complementary colors that work quite well together. So you would have this being your 3 different colors of the entire word hello. You have your fractal noise applied to a shape layer, which is your background, and you have the entire word building up. Once you have all of this done, then your first section is complete. Your first color composition of the word hello is finished. And to complete the activity, you're going to need 4 separate color variations of the same animation. So what I would suggest then now is, once this is finished, you'll save it, go to your composition, add to media encoder and render it out. And for you to change the colors now, so let's say now for example I want to do something that's more green and purple. So I want to change my background first of all. So my background shape layer is selected, go to the colors. I want something more along the lines of a very dark green, or actually maybe something like this, more of a green color. I'm going to say okay, and my gray hello, I'm going to go to the word color. Let's make this more of a white, not really too much of a white, let's say more of a light green. So that's the sort of feel we get over here. And then we're going to move over to the red hello, double click, go inside, change the word color. For this I'm looking for something that's more of a dark type of a purple, something like that. Got a purple there. And then for the pink hello, I'm going to double click, go inside, select the word color, go to fill, and I want something that's more of a lighter, sort of a purplish color. And now we've completely changed the color and the feel of animations. Now we have purple on green. So you would need to do this 4 different times to have 4 different rendered compositions of the word hello being built up in 4 different colors. And in our last session I'm going to show you how to make a transition and to put them all together. So yeah, for this section that's pretty much it. The next session is going to look at the film burn transition that is used to combine them all together. Yeah, peace.